Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representatives Baum, Camper, Freeman, Gant, Hawk, Hazelwood, Lynn, Ogles, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Chairman Hicks. You've got a
Here.
quorum.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Subcommittee to order for February 2nd, 2022. Members, do we have any personal orders before we get started? I will begin. I do have two gentlemen I'd like to recognize if they would stand. Would you please welcome Richie Broyles and Tristan Hopkins? They are auctioneers from Hamlin County, so would you please make them feel welcome? Thank you all for being here. Members, any other personal orders? Seeing none, we have 5 bills on our calendar for today. Item number 1, there's Representative Griffey. Let's see, item number 1 is House Bill 20 by Representative Griffey. Sir, you have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. You have a motion second. You're recognized on House Bill 20, and it looks like there is an amendment with this bill, drafting code 12733. Is that what you have?
I believe so, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is there a motion and a second on the amendment? We have a motion and a second. You are recognized on Amendment 012733.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the amendment simply changes the effective date of the bill so that it would be 2022 rather than 2021 when I carried this last year. So,
all right. Thank you. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on Amendment 012733 to House Bill 20. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on House Bill 20 as amended. Sir, you're recognized.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 20 tries to make an improvement of finances for Tier 3 and Tier 4 counties for job tax credits. I do have a physical note with it. I'm going to try to work on that, but that's what it does. I'm happy to answer any questions from any members.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, any discussion? Seeing none, as Representative Griffey has alluded to, there is a cost that is associated with House Bill 20 as amended. We will have to put that behind the budget and consider it at a later date. The bill also has been calendared 3 times, which means that we will need to place it on a special calendar, and that special calendar will be published with our final calendar pursuant to House rules. So without objection, House Bill 20 will go on special calendar to be published with final calendar. Without objection. All right. Thank you for that. Item number 2, also by Representative Griffey. You have a motion and a second on House Bill 800, and it looks like there's also an amendment that we need to vote on as well, drafting code 012729. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes, Mr. Chairman. I believe it changes the effective date, too, of the bill.
All right. Members, we have a motion to second on the amendment. Motion. We have a motion to second. You've heard the description. Any discussion on the amendment 012729? Seeing none, we're now voting on Amendment 012729 to House Bill 800. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on House Bill 800 as amended. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 800 would simply prohibit the LGBTQ curriculum and supplemental materials in our schools. I think that's something that should be left to mom and dad at home. It does have a cost on it, so I'm going to have to try to work with physical review and come back to the committee on it.
All right. Thank you very much for this. Members, any discussion? Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, can you give me an idea of what the physical cost is on this? I'm trying to wrap my mind around what that could be.
Well, I was a little surprised that the physical review indicated there could be a cost to this, and I believe it had to do with if schools have to take material out that they've already purchased and replace that with additional school material, that would be the cost. So I really want to get with physical review with this and challenge that conclusion, because this simply is saying we're not to use these in our materials going forward. I don't know how that's going to create additional costs for our schools, but I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place at this point. So,
okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would question that. I was reading the fiscal impact, and it does seem kind of vague. And removing something, I don't see how that could be a cost. So I'd love to see us vote on this. Despite that, I don't know what the procedure is, but that just looks a little odd to me. And I understand they have certain rules they go by, and I'm not criticizing them at all. But considering this is just kind of hypothetical, that there might be some cost, that concerns me.
And let me just say this before we go to Representative Lynn, and thank you, Chairman Todd, for that. Just as a reminder, what we do on local bills, since there is a local impact with House Bill 800, there is a potential local impact. And I'll just remind the members that what we do is we hold back all those local bills to figure out what is going to be the overall impact for the locals, because the state is 10% is what we have to come up with of whatever that overall number is. So what we do, this is not out of the ordinary by any stretch of the imagination. When we see these bills where there's a local impact, it's always been customary in this particular committee to follow suit with that and to hold these bills back. So that's all we're simply doing, to try to get a tally, an overall tally for what the impact on the locals will be. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my intent to try to get with physical review and go over that conclusion and finding, because I'm like with Representative Chairman Todd and others, that I don't see how it's going to create a financial impact if they're simply, we're going to say we're going to remove these materials from the school curriculum and supplemental materials. So, but I'm at where I'm at, so I'll just submit it to the committee.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see us just go ahead and vote on this, too. I can't imagine that this is part of state standards. I've never seen it in a state standard, so that would be a textbook. This is probably the supplemental materials that some instructors will find on their own, and they find them on their own. They can simply supplant them with something else, just exclude that and find something else. I can't imagine this would literally be a textbook that was approved by the State Textbook Commission that we're talking about here. I cannot imagine that this is in the state standards. It seems like it's supplemental material that maybe some instructors decide they want to bring in. And really, that's oftentimes online stuff. They just print it. They produce it on their own, and it's not something that is distributed by the school system.
Thank you, Representative Lynn. Leader Gant.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'm sorry to ask another question, but can we roll this to a certain future date till when you get the fiscal review back, and then come back to us, and so we can see that? Would that, Chairman, would that be too much to ask for?
No, I think if the representative is the sponsor of this legislation, wants to work with fiscal review, can get that removed, then we would be in the posture to be able to vote for that. We could reconsider our actions, and we could bring that bill up, and we could vote on it at a later date. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for purposes of clarification, it's my understanding, because it is a fiscal note, it's going to go to that calendar with for local bills that could have an impact. If I can get with physical review, and when we come back for that calendar and have physical review saying there's not going to be a cost to the state, it would be taken up by the committee at that time and voted upon. So that was my understanding of where I just needed time to get with physical review first before I could come back to the committee and have it voted upon. So am I correct? Is my understanding correct? Or?
Right.
Okay.
Leader Gant.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see. Let's go to Chairman Williams, then we'll go to Leader.
I don't want to cut off debate. I think the members asked for some additional time to work on the bill. I think if we were to act in any way today, as is the former chairman of finance knows, if there's a budget, if there's any cost associated with the bill, it has to go behind the budget. It's just the way it is. Those are the rules that we hear, because we're here to expend the state's resources. And I can appreciate the members wanting to vote, but we do have a process in which we need to maintain. If the member wants 2 weeks, then we can make a motion to roll the bill for 2 weeks. If he wants 4 weeks, we can do that, or we can vote today for go to behind the budget. So I'm happy to make a motion if that's what the chairman wants, or you can use the rules and do it without objection. So that's just my suggestion.
Let me ask, let's go to Representative Hawk, then we'll come back.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a little bit of clarity. I think we passed legislation sometime in the last year or two that dealt with supplemental materials, which was the concern of a prior speaker. So I think that this bill more specifically does deal with textbooks and potential of what could be in there. So hence why there is a fiscal note, and it would not necessarily be removal is no cost, but replacement would be the cost that we're looking at, and I'm guessing that that's what fiscal review is seeing. I think the majority of folks on this committee certainly support this legislation. I know I do. So but I think there is a certain process and a potential cost to local that must be defined better than it is being defined right now. So the conversation about supplemental materials, we've already addressed that. We already made that to where it's a moot point in this conversation. So this is more about the textbook itself or the online materials that individuals, the individuals inside the classroom would have. So hope that gives some clarity, Chairman Hicks, to the conversation. And, you know, I joined Chairman Williams in this conversation about the potential action we could take. So thank you very much.
Representative Griffey.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to accomplish the will of this committee, and would it be inappropriate for me to ask for 2 weeks to work with fiscal review and come back and have the bill heard at that time?
We could roll that bill 2 weeks. Of course, it's a purview of this committee, what they want to do. Chairman Todd, do you?
Yeah, thank you,
Like we
Mr. Chairman.
recognize.
I'm just going to ask if you want to consider taking it off notice, and then you control when it comes back before the committee, if that's not going to hurt the bill.
If I may do that, then, Mr. Chairman, I'll take it off notice for today, and I'll bring it back on notice after I talk with fiscal review.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none without objection, House Bill 800 off notice. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other bill left.
We're coming to you.
I didn't know if you need to go to someone else, or I could.
Nope, while we have you there, item number 5, members, if you'll turn to item number 5, that's going to be House Joint Resolution 3, also by Representative Griffey.
And if I could get a motion and a second on this one.
You have a motion? Do you have a second? You have a motion and a second? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a Veterans Bingo and Nonprofits Bingo Constitutional Amendment. It's my understanding the committee is going to have a special constitutional amendment calendar later on, and so it'll go on to that. So I'm happy to answer any questions if we need to now, but I assume we'll just be back at a later date to discuss it.
Thank you, Representative Griffey. Members, Representative Griffey stole my thunder, so you've heard the description of the posture we're currently in. So any discussion? Seeing none without objection, House Joint Resolution 3 moves to the Constitutional Amendments calendar to be heard at a later time. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the
All
committee.
right. Thank you very much. Leader Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And personal order, as we're beyond personal orders, but I want to thank all the veterans in our room who have come in to probably hear that legislation and thank them for their service as well. So I appreciate our veterans in the room as well.
All right, members, that brings us to item number 3 on our calendar, House Bill 1712 by Representative Hodges. And we have a request to roll that 2 weeks. So without objection, House Bill 1712 rolled 2 weeks. All right, that brings us to item number 4. Item number 4 on our calendar is House Bill 1392 by Representative Freeman. You have a motion and a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee. So House Bill 1392 is a statewide bill that authorizes local governments to regulate entertainment transportation. It defines entertainment transportation. It excludes cabs, limousines, sedans, shuttles, and it is permissive. And it's again, it's a statewide bill that will affect many communities across our great state. And with that, ask for your support.
All right, thank you very much, members. You've heard the description of House Bill 1392. Any discussion? Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill concerns me on a few levels. The main one is that we have businesses already operating in this space, and this does not give them any kind of warning or ramp-up time for their cost structure. Is my biggest concern. We're changing the rules in the middle of the game, literally, for these folks, and that's my biggest concern in this. I know there's some safety concerns that this hopes to address, and it may address depending on what the locals pass in their permit process. The other concern I have is that it does not put any requirement on the the locals to issue these permits if all the requirements are met. And so that will be addressed, I think, at a later committee, if this bill makes it even that far. But I do appreciate you allowing me to at least express that, and that's again, a concern I think we have to look out for is, existing businesses that are going to be affected by this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to see if the sponsor would like to comment. Not? Okay. Representative Ogles.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chairman, to the sponsor. Going through the Nashville ordinance, there's several points of contention I have. One is the 72 hours they have to report an accident of bodily injury or death to the board. I think during the week, if we're in operation, they should report that almost immediately. The other was pertaining to minors in proximity of alcohol and liquor. As written, it would allow 13-year-olds to ride around on party buses with liquor if those permits are issued, which I think is probably not the standard for our bars downtown Nashville. I usually don't see 13-year-olds in bars. So I have a problem with that. The third issue, and probably the one that I'm most concerned about, is there's nowhere in this Nashville ordinance that there's any at all safety standards to be placed on these vehicles. And these vehicles are highly modified. I'm seeing hay wagons pulled behind tractors that have thousands of pounds of structure well above the axles, 12 foot in the air. I mean, they literally look like death traps. And what we're doing is we're letting tourists come to Nashville, sign a waiver to say, you're going to get on this vehicle, and if it rolls over and you die, you have no recourse. I think that's not us doing our job as good stewards in the state. So I understand local control, but I hate the fact that Nashville is going to be given the authority to approve anything that's rolling down the street right now, and the state's not stepping in. We saw this recently with scooters in the city, and that was a 3-year nightmare before it got fixed, and several people got really hurt, and we had some fatalities. So I don't like the fact that we're giving local control with no guardrails from the state, and there's no safety standards being placed on these vehicles whatsoever. I find it highly objectionable, and as written, I cannot support it, as much as I love the sponsor dearly. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ogles. Representative
I
Freeman.
will respond to that since he loves me so much. I appreciate you bringing up exactly the concerns that this legislation was brought forward to address. And it's the unsafe environment of these transportation vehicles being able to operate in cities across the state without any regulation whatsoever. And you brought up some interesting points on the Nashville regulation, and I'm going to be totally honest, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to protect your community in Franklin, the communities across our state that are dealing with this right now, and they all need to have the ability to address it on a local level. And we don't need to have to come up here and pass a new law to allow a municipality to regulate something that is in their backyard that they are seeing. And so I appreciate your comments, but I think that this is the best way to move forward. So thank you. With that, once again, ask for everyone's support.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Chairman. To the sponsor, I appreciate your trust in Nashville's ability to self-police, but literally we have the ordinance in front of us as written and proposed, and every one of those bars and restaurants up and down Broadway has standards that apply statewide. There's ADA accessibility. There's rules about the fire marshal. That's exactly what this body has enacted statewide. I think it's our duty to be sure we put some guardrails in place that, frankly, Nashville and the municipalities are not operating under their own set of standards that very well may be very hazardous to public safety. I talked to Department of Safety, And they were very fearful of inspecting trailers because a modified trailer takes a high level of expertise to look at. You have to understand the gauge of the metal that's being used, the structural integrity, the types of welds that are being made. There's all kinds of mechanical tests that have to be performed for a vehicle to hit the road. All this is done in vehicles. It's all done in buses. Nowhere in the public transportation industry, when you get on a bus in Nashville, do you have to sign a waiver to say if this bus rolls over and you die, you don't have any recourse. Those vehicles are approved for hauling people around. These vehicles I'm seeing in Nashville are not made for people. Some of them are ag trailers, and frankly, I don't trust the process. I don't see anything has been put in place to regard the safety of those occupants whatsoever. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ogles. We will go back to the sponsor. Would you like to address that?
Again, and not trying to sound like a broken record, I feel like there's a disconnect in what you're saying and what I'm saying. I agree that this is an unsafe experience right now, and I'm hoping to make it more safe for people across the state. And these vehicles currently are licensed by the state of Tennessee, and they're not being inspected. They're not being inspected for safety. And so my hope is to allow municipalities across the state the ability to have some ability to regulate these vehicles so that when people come to the cities, that they can know that they're gonna be on a safe they're gonna have a safe experience. And so you keep talking about Nashville, and this is a broader statewide application, and what's best for one city may not be what's best for another. So anyway, I ask for everybody's support.
All right, thank you, Representative Freeman. Further discussion? Seeing none, we will now be voting on House Bill 1392. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. House Bill 1392 moves to full finance. All right, that concludes our calendar for today. Do we have any further business before the committee? Seeing none without objection, we stand adjourned.